Welcome back to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast. We're continuing our summer series, breaking down all the Survivor seasons from 1 through, let's call it 28. 29? 28, I think. I am here. I'm John. I'm with my co-host Andy, and I'm going to be representing Team America this week because I'm going to be outmatched by Canadians once again as we welcome back Billy to the show. Billy, welcome back.
Hi, John. Nice to be back.
My name is Andy. I am Canadian and have opinions and stuff.
You forgot to mention maple syrup.
Oh, something. Thank
How
you.
Can I be sure it's really you?
Listening to my thoughts.
And I should mention that this is theoretically the first time I'm talking to Billy, at least the first time you guys would have heard me talking to Billy, because last time we lost my audio when we talked to Billy. I didn't get the admirable fill-in role that Andy got when he lost his audio last week, though.
No, I just cut you right out. And there were so many people who was like, that was such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. I got a lot of comments.
It was weird how well it worked, too.
Yeah. A lot of, that was the best Andy ever. So
yeah, they say that. But they don't know how much they lost. I had many deep thoughts about those seasons. Honestly, if we had to lose any seasons, I was happy that it was those three. It was kind of like, that was all right. Nope, sucked. There you go. That was what you missed out of me last week. But this week, we have 4 seasons to talk about. So hopefully all the recording works properly. Otherwise, that's a lot of typing for you.
Yes, it is. Whole lot of tweets, especially because one of them, we'll save it for later. But one of them we actually considered breaking off into its own podcast with just you and me discussing, because it feels like there's a lot of opinions about that one.
Yeah, there's a chance that if we hadn't thought of this, we would have just done a whole summer series on that season and then just all our listeners. But
alienated the whole audience.
But, I think we got a few ones here. There's some favorites here, or at least there's a favorite, and we'll start off with that one. Cook Islands is the first season we're going to talk about. Where did Billy have this one ranked?
Billy has it number 1 on his list. And how many seasons have you seen, Billy?
Probably 23 now.
No, I bet you're pretty close to 25 or 6. The time you made the list, though, I think it was 21. This kid keeps watching them.
Well, that's the idea, isn't it?
You're missing, I think, just One World, Philippines, and Caramon, and then you're good to go.
Yep.
Wow, way to catch
up. And Borneo's unrated.
Oh, you didn't rate Borneo?
No, such a weird season after all these years to rate, so I just left it unrated. I'm looking at my list right now, so.
Cook Islands. Best season in the history of the show. Interesting idea. Explain yourself, sir.
Well, partly I just knew everyone was going to go heroes versus villains. I figured let's pick something else. Also, I think it's one of the better, not best seasons. Partly just because I think the gimmick of the season works really well. You literally get some faces that you just don't see before that season or even much after that seaon.
Yeah, since Cook Islands, has there been more Asian people on Cook Islands than there have been since Cook Islands? I guess Fiji had more, possible. So maybe since Fiji, because Fiji was cast in similar fashion. But then you got Christina Cha and
Frosty.
It's
Brenda.
been slim. There you go. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so you get more faces you don't usually see on Survivor or even American TV for all that matter, and or Canadian TV. And
maybe you're watching the wrong shows.
Possibly, but no Asian men don't show up on television much, period.
But when they do, those characters sure are smart.
Wow.
Usually.
You're scoring a lot of points with the Asian community tonight, Andy.
I am pointing out the contradictions and flaw in casting, sir, not my own opinions.
Yeah. And, Andy's right. I think casting for Cook Island was probably one of these stronger seasons. Like, where has Yule been? Why wasn't Yule on before? Where are the Yules? Why isn't he showing up again? Either himself or, a suitable analog. Also, one thing I think Cook Island does really well, I know you two haven't really been talking on the podcast a lot, is the challenges are actually really good on Cook Island. And in fairness, 90% of that is still has to do with the casting.
So you're a big challenge person?
Well,
I generally discount those.
Well, the thing is, challenges just take up so much time of a Survivor episode. If they're not very good or interesting, easy to lose interest very quickly, and Cook Island does not fail in this regard. And like I said, it's partly casting. Like, one of the challenges in Cagayan, rip a person off the pole. It was really good on Cook Island. It was terrible on Cagayan because the matchups between people were awful. So it wasn't particularly entertaining. It had weird connotations when you see LJ ripping off Alexis off her her wooden pole. It was weird on Cagayan.
And then the 6'10" guy that isn't going to move. For nothing.
But that same challenge was great on Cook Island.
Yeah, I'll say Cook Islands is one of my favorite. I don't know if I'd rank it first because I don't know what I'm ranking what. But
to be fair, Billy's trying to be contrarian here by putting it number one.
Yeah, he was gaming the system.
Boo on you. Yeah, how dare you?
But it's all casting. It was a diversity of cast, obviously, to meet the Race Wars theme. But it also ended up because they had to go out and find people as opposed to just going after the same people they usually find in bars and applicants. Which I think Survivor has a fairly small set of demographics that people follow it. I'm saying people like me and John, maybe. That a diversity of types. These aren't the sort of type of people, in many cases, that thought about playing Survivor. And that's why a lot of, amongst fans, applicants becomes a dirty word. Oh, that person applied to be, or was recruited to be on the show. Sorry, not applicants. Recruits become
applicants
a dirty word.
Are the holy grail.
Yeah. Because, we always need a new Papa Smurf. But sometimes the show needs to recruit people that never would have thought of being on Survivor. Doesn't necessarily mean they're completely unfamiliar with Survivor. Doesn't mean they're ill-suited to play Survivor. It's just, the question is, where's Yul been? Yul's been working. He has a real job, and he doesn't feel that you need to feed his own ego. Although, please, Yul, come back. You're one of my favorites of all time.
Feed the ego, Yul.
Yes. Have an ego, damn it. But yeah, I mean, I think he was working under in the Obama administration, all that. So people like him probably just never occurred to them like, hey, I will debase myself on reality TV. And the show found a lot of different types of people, and it resulted in really interesting television. And if you want the proof of how good the casting is, 4 people on this season have come back 3 times or more. I guess it's just 3 times each. So this is the first season for Parvati. This is the first season for Jonathan Penner. This is the first season for Candace, who unbelievably has come back 3 times.
What do all 3 of those people have in common, by the way?
Yeah, I know. And then this is the first season of Ozzy, which certainly is an R type of player, but there's undenying that he adds a unique flavor to Survivor, and then he has many, many fans. And he doesn't have something in common with those other 3 people.
That is true.
And also, this season is absolutely peak Ozzy. What do you think, John?
Well, you nailed it there, because it's got to be peak Ozzy, because it's all downhill from here. I think we brought this up before, but I really like this season in terms of how well it was cast, like you guys were saying. I don't know if it was just that they had to, as Probst would say, dig deep in casting terms to try to find people that they wouldn't normally have cast on the show. But whatever they did, it worked really well, and I think it actually had a negative impact on the next season that we'll discuss at some point soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the follow-up season, which let's stop pussyfooting around, it's Fiji. I think that was the B class of the casting for this. They were the junior varsity of the Cook Islands experiment.
And I was going to save it for when we discuss Fiji, but really, it feels like in watching Fiji, those were the guys that didn't quite make the cut for Cook Island.
Mm-hmm. And maybe they could have had 2 middle seasons if they just would have split that cast up and put some of them on this one, some of that. But I like the fact that this one concentrated fairly good casting throughout. Even the people that we didn't really like, they just ended up being really good foils for the eventual victors. And the show was lucky that it worked out that way. Otherwise, I suppose it could have been the other way. In an alternate universe where Adam wins this season, it would have been terrible.
Oh,
God. And he was set up pretty good. But yeah, and not just diversity of races and diversity of character types, but because it was different types of characters, they approached the game of Survivor just a little bit differently than what we've been seeing. And even if some of that's just minorities got to work with other minorities. So instead of being the token that has to work harder to blend into the social situations, which happens a lot on Survivor, unfortunately. A player like Yule was able to be the alpha from the outset. He didn't have to, just kind of like placate the white people for a while. Ozzy was able to be the alpha right away in his tribe, and mixed results on that one. So, big question we often ask is how well did the twist or gimmick work? The gimmick of this season was, 4 races going up against each other, which is a horrific marketing gimmick, by the way.
It did lose them a major sponsor.
Yeah, we don't have a car anymore because of this season. Obviously, they did it the very next season in fairly memorable fashion, but that's because they hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah, as a civilian who was into Survivor when Cook Island came out, I heard about this happening, and I did not want to see. I did not tune in to see the results.
Yeah, no, like if you don't know Survivor, and one of the reasons why you do big twists like this is to grab the attention of the non-viewer, it sounds really bad. It sounds like something that would air on Fox right after Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire. Now, for seasoned fans, I was like, well, everybody calm down. They're going to do this for like 3 episodes and then they'll merge the tribes, which is what happened. So how well did the twist work? In the respect of how they set it up like it would be a real thing, we didn't get to see which was the dominant race.
Thanks, Hitler.
Yeah. Although the white people lasted the longest, but they eventually lost to those minorities. So yes, if you want to find out and watch The Amazing Race, because I assume that's what that show's about.
In your estimation, race in that show means something entirely different.
I'm gonna.
Yes. Okay.
But it ended up working really well, even in unintended consequences, because it got us different kinds of people that aren't typically on Survivor. What do you guys think about the twist?
Well, let me hit some quick notes, because I'd like to do this for all the seasons that we discuss. First of all, we started the season with 4 tribes of 5, just like we did in Panama. Actually, kind of was keeping a theme here. I think Fiji was going to go for this as well, but they scrapped that for reasons we'll get to at some point soon. But this was our first ever Final 3 season, although, let's be honest, it was more like a Final 2.
She deserves more credit. She was great. Just
right up until fire making, she was great.
I know. That's a great moment, too.
It really is.
But as Parvati said, she was sitting between 2 giants, Yeah, basically 2 approaches to Survivor on display there, and Becky.
Right. We actually did have Exile Island on this season and a Hidden Immunity Idol that could be played after the votes were read, which is a great idea. I feel like they should do that again sometime.
You should text somebody on the show about that.
Maybe someone should text Probst. Novel idea. Anyway, they're for the very first time, the Mutiny twist, which this wasn't the first appearance, but this was the first time it was actually accepted. Candace and then eventually Penner take the bait. And it's the only time in the show's history that anyone has ever accepted the opportunity to mutiny. It's been offered before. It's been offered since. Candace and Penner are the only ones to do it.
It's been offered since?
Huh. Yes, it has, supposedly. Was it Tocantins? I had it written down, and then I was like, who cares?
I think that might sound right about Tocantins, and then even Sierra didn't do it because it's a sucker's move.
I am Andy, and I have confirmed that mutiny was offered in Tocantins. Something maple syrup.
But I was thinking, they should have done it for Blood versus Water. If you're going to bring this twist back, that'd be the time, right?
Oh, well, you never know. We'll find out really soon.
We have another one coming up. Anyway.
Yes. All right. And then the double elimination in this season, which gets some conspiracy theorists going. But after losing an immunity challenge, the dominant numbers-wise tribe has basically back-to-back tribal councils and has to vote out 2 people in a row, which then leads to the opportunity for Penner to work with Yule after the merge. And then last and certainly least, in my estimation, Ozzy won 5 out of 6 individual immunities. Hooray for you, Ozzy.
That didn't sound sincere, John.
Oh, I was trying to hang a banner for Ozzy. That's why, I was out of breath from blowing up all these balloons to celebrate.
Yeah, Ozzy was so good in challenges, everybody forgot what an entitled punk he was to start the season. And have seemingly just forgotten it ever since, even though the entitled punk has shown up more than once since then.
Yeah, not the only appearance of the entitled punk version of Ozzy.
Yeah, it disappeared in the second half when he was, Spunky Ozzy leading his team of outcasts over the mutineers.
Yeah. We also forget Yule was so clearly throwing so many of those individual immunity challenges as well.
He certainly wasn't given 100%.
Yeah.
He was making sure to stay in second.
I think, though, that the final challenge, was it the final or the next to last? He was clearly trying to beat Ozzy, and he just couldn't do it.
Yeah, because he would have liked to have voted out Ozzy at that moment.
Yes, he would have. Would not have liked the close vote at the final Tribal Council. So, Billy, what was your biggest highlight of the season since you facetiously ranked it number 1?
Well, the obvious highlight is clearly, Yule talking Penner to jump off, throw his game off a cliff to elevate Yule's game when he flipped his vote at the first Tribal Council after the merge. Like, that is the strategic highlight of the season, in my opinion. And I think most people's opinion. Like, it's just...
See, I don't know that he necessarily, meaning Penner, threw his game out the window, just because he was number 5 in the group that he was in. It was kind of the Cochran situation. Like, well, roll the dice. Maybe you do move up, because he wasn't going to get past 5 in that other group.
You're probably right. Same thing with Cochran, but even then, there's still that chance, like, if he won the key immunities at some point, he could have, he could have maybe made it to the final 3 in some fashion. Like, especially in that season, he would have only had to win maybe 2 if he was 5 to get to the final 3. And he would have alienated that entire tribe, who probably wouldn't have voted for him anyway.
And it turns out...
He was clearly having trouble fitting in.
Oh, yeah. I wrote this down word for word. This is Jonathan's first confessional after that vote. Because I wanted to swing the vote, flip the game, I voted for Nate. And the truth is, I'd rather play with the I2 people. I'd rather see them win if I don't win. I was in the position to make that choice, and I did, and I believe I made the right choice. Like, he very clearly knew he was
dooming himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, but your Hawkeye impression needs some work. I believe that. Anyway, that's the highlight.
What does the Marvel superhero have anything to do with Jonathan Penner?
Oh, you're so young. No, I think that was the most exciting moment of the season. It's one of the reasons why I view the season very favorably. Because, for one, Penner was pretty cool, and the I-24 were awesome because Yule was a part of them. But more, it was one of the first and the earliest episodes that so much of it was just dedicated to strategy and discussion of strategy. Survivor notoriously likes to hide a lot of that stuff from us so that the vote can be a surprise. This time they didn't have to, because it was going to be a surprise no matter which way it went down. So they were able to show us a lot of the process. And the scenes of Yule and Penner just rationally having a conversation of what's in their best interest, what are the good counter moves and the right moves, was something I'd been craving for so long. That being delivered that in the package of 2 guys that I really liked was...
Phrasing.
Yes, I know. You know what? No, maybe it's both. Was just great. And then, of course, it has the added benefit that it flipped the game from awful people in control to great people in control. Seeing Nate just getting, voted out, that was fun, especially because it sounds like they were really mistreating Penner on that side. Like, using his clothes as wipe for body parts. So then seeing the entitled young people eat it in that fashion is always exciting. As much as I'm an analytic player, I still like it when likable underdogs get the better of jerks, which is why Survivor will, if that's not actually what's happening, we'll edit it to make it seem like that's what's happening. We'll discuss that later.
Also, was the Aitutaki 4 the best underdogs in Survivor? They were the underdogs, but they were unbeatable too.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're much more interesting than Roto 4. We discussed that earlier. That was the first time something like this happened. It just turned out unfortunate that those people were, beige incarnate. And then, later season we'll talk about how Gabon did it, but the underdogs were just as awful as the overdogs. So, yeah, I think so. I'm not sure there's a lot of competition, but yeah.
And also, I have to say, I really enjoy that sort of... They don't highlight it too heavily, but the narrative of Cook Island is white people are awful. Like that double boot you mentioned, who goes? Oh, the black lady. Oh, we have to boot someone else. Who is it going to be? Is it going to be... No, it's going to be the Asian lady. It's just this, Like, I almost kind of want to see what would happen in some alternate universe. Like, oh, Nate's the first one to go in that, situation. It's just...
Yeah, that's for the conspiracy theorists out there. It's like, oh, see, they were trying to help the minorities out. 2 minorities went that vote. And what would have happened? That could have been totally backfired if, the I-24 would have lost. This whole season would have been sunk at that point,
exactly.
Right? Yeah. It would have been 7-2.
Also, in my mind, the double boot was inevitable at some point. Like, there have been too many pagongings up to this point, so it's either that minority tribe cut them down as fast as possible, or have the majority tribe cut down that the minority tribe actually has a shot at doing something. Like, the double boot was inevitable, as something production would do behind the scenes there.
So what do you think the highlight was, John?
So I'm going to dissent from you guys and call it the mutiny, because we don't get this underdog story without that mutiny taking place. I mean, it didn't seem like that amazing of a moment when it happened, but what it sets up afterwards, it's worthwhile. I call that the highlight of the season. I
wonder if we don't, though, or if it's just that we saw it happening. Like, we could, because Candace would have flipped at the merge, right?
Would she have been around at the merge? I feel like Penner and Candace were next to go, and this is kind of getting into some
Ozzy was next
strategy
to go.
Thing. You think so?
I know so. I believe they were talking like, we might need to lose to get rid of Ozzy.
Oh yeah, Ozzy was definitely next to in some of the conversations, it made it sound like Becky and Yule wanted to take Candace to the end too.
Yeah, and they weren't sure about Penner. So I wonder if the mutiny actually worked in their favor quite a bit. But either way, it definitely was a moment in Survivor, and yeah, it set up a lot of interesting things. Like,
but we also
Candace
know
Adams
from
sucking face.
Speaking
of the worst part of this season. No, sorry, John, you were saying?
I'm a little wary about the whole edit thing now, because after, talking to Tony and him saying, basically words were put in their mouth, the scenes were moved around at different times of the season. I'm not so sure anymore. And especially I actually picked one up watching Fiji, which we'll discuss when we get to that season. But there's some stuff now, if you go back and watch certain seasons and the outcome, you can tell it's edited in different places to make it seem like certain things made more sense or didn't make sense. So were they going to vote out Ozzy? I don't know.
I think they were, because he was, he had no voice at that point. He was trying to align with Cowboy and...
Flicka,
yeah. And that's actually part of why, what I've said earlier about Ozzy and how nobody seems to remember. It's almost like the dividing line of the Ozzy edit. Up until that point, he was kind of like the jerk. He was the guy that threw the challenge to get rid of the fat kid. And then, at the mutiny, suddenly Ozzy's like this, John and Depian, quirky hero. And then he was just a straight up hero. So it would be a weird edit to have had that, let's get rid of Ozzy. It wasn't like, oh no, fan favorite Ozzy's in trouble. It's just kind of like, yeah, that weird guy that nobody likes is in trouble.
Yeah. Also, you sort of get the impression Yule and Becky, they were probably talking about everyone at some point. Should we get rid of this person? I bet those two were, everyone got mentioned at some point. I bet the editors quite enjoyed that too.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, is I feel like you could edit in any conversation that Yule and Becky had to make it seem like someone...
But I don't think Candace was going next.
Yeah.
She was clearly in an alliance of 3 with Yule and Becky.
Yeah. And Ozzy's just too obvious a challenge threat for the post-merge, so it just made complete sense that they would want to get rid of him while they had the chance, while they still had the power.
All
right, so who was the defining player of the season? Andy, you go first.
It's Yule. This season took on Yule's characteristics in that it was
quiet and Asian.
Yeah, something like that. I'm actually trying to figure out when Billy earlier was saying white people are awful. It's like, does he get to say that? You're half white, but
I was wondering about that. Did you two get me to do these seasons because I'm half Asian? I'm just wondering.
Yes, that was the intention.
Couldn't find any non-white people to talk about these seasons.
But no,
you're our token invite.
That's right. Yule was, strategically dominant, but in a calm, more reserved way. He was athletic, but again, not over the top in the sense that Ozzy was there, right? And that's kind of how Cook Island's put out. It's highly competent. It's enjoyable with not a lot of unlikable people. It's not very twisty or gimmicky, despite the fact that it was marketed as the biggest gimmicky season of all time. It's just a really solid, great season, and I think that's Yule.
So, Billy, who's your defining player then?
Yeah, Yule. It's Yule. Like, there's no other player. Maybe there's a dark horse case for Ozzy, but even then, it's Yule all the way.
And actually, just to further my point before I let other people talk, I think it's also why Cook Islands doesn't seem to get the credit it deserves, despite the fact that it, seemed to be such a fruitful, proven ground of characters, right? Like, Probst will talk on and on about those 3 of the 4 people we mentioned that have come back over and over again. But he doesn't really seem to talk about Cook Islands that much, and maybe because as a producer, he knows that it caused production such trouble with their, bad ideas of marketing. And I think that's the same with Yule. Yule does not get the credit he deserves. He was one of the greatest players of all time. I would say easily top 10. And, he's not in that stupid Hall of Fame they have. But, Ozzy is. Parvati is. And, no shade on that. She was awesome later on. I bet Penner will be soon. So I think that's why Cook Islands equals Yule. Even is a little bit of an underdog season in people's opinion.
All right. Well, I'll make it unanimous. It is Yule. So let's move on to the biggest flaw this season then. Billy, start us off. What's the worst part about this season?
Probably the immunity idol, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Like, just because this was very much in that transitional period where they haven't figured out the idol, and people throw shade on Yule for having this idol too, and I think production did bungle the idol somewhat too. Like, they should not have let it to take them to the final 3 in a final 3 tribal council season. But on the other hand, too, everyone knew the rules of this idol, too, so...
Yeah, it wasn't like Tony's idol of all power.
Well, Tony clearly had the most powerful idol ever in the game, just because of that lack of information. Whereas here, at least in Cook Island and Panama, the information was a level playing field.
Yeah, to the point where even somebody like Adam or Parvati were trying to get Ozzy and Sundra, and maybe even Becky, to at least throw votes at Yule to get him to burn his idol. And they wouldn't do that anyway because Yule was great. And I think I'll agree with you because I think it hurts his legacy. People like to, say, he wasn't really that great. He had the most powerful idol, so that's why he won. And my point is, he didn't need the most powerful idol. He needed a idol. He needed an idol to flip Jonathan Penner. And then after that vote, it was basically inconsequential. Like, Becky and Sundra weren't going to vote him out. So it didn't, protect him. What protected him was being in the majority after the merge. And after that, being a superior player. But he wasn't in jeopardy after that point, so he didn't really need immunity. They needed enough immunity to get by 1 vote, so they had that stick to give Penner a reason to flip. After that, it could have been any old idol.
And who knows? I could see Penner flipping even without an idol, too.
Yeah. I think part of Penner's flip was, these people are assholes, these people aren't. If I'm not going to win, then I might as well, play Kingmaker.
Well, you're both wrong, because the biggest flaw of the season was that Billy's love for Candace went unrequited.
Billy on the show, not Billy.
Yes, the Billy on the show. And in the end...
That was such a weird, great moment.
Yeah.
After she passed on him, all she ends up getting in return is John Cody. So,
watching her get booted on Cook Island must have been really awkward for 2 dudes, really. Maybe 3 if you include Adam, although he's probably just high-fiving himself. Way to go, bro.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, because she started dating John Cody right after she got back. So that would be fun if they were watching. I was like, hey, honey, let's not watch tonight's episode. The pain of being voted out. Can you go grab me a drink
in about 3 minutes?
And then Billy was like, no, I thought we had something.
Yeah, I watched Blood vs. Water. I think most of the Candace and John parts by the time I started watching Cook Island. I knew she marries John Cody in the future. So it was really weird watching Cook Island and her and Adam. It was just and they're terrible kissers too. And it's just such a weird.
They were like, I want to kiss you, but I really don't want to taste it since you haven't brushed your teeth in a while. I'll say Ozzy and Amanda didn't have that problem later.
Andy, what's the relationshipy name for this group? Because we missed it last season since we lost your audio, or last week since we lost your audio, but you dropped a romber on me, which is apparently an actual thing.
Yeah, I don't make stuff like that up. I also don't I like how you act this this is deep knowledge. It's like if you talk about Survivor at any level on the internet, you come across some of this stuff.
I have not heard romber before. I'm sorry.
No, you have. I don't think anybody made one for Candace and Adam because nobody believed that showmance would last. And they were right.
But the Billy...
But at the time, when they were discussing, Adam, when people talked about him, was A-DUMB. because that fits so well.
Zing. Way to go, Internet. All right, anything more to say about Cook Islands before we move on?
I don't know if it's the best show in the history or season in the history of Survivor. Apparently neither does Billy, but I really like it. Yep. And as I said in earlier podcasts, if you're going to show somebody a season of Survivor, I think this is actually a good one to pick. It's late enough in the process of Survivor that it's not like completely unfamiliar in the way that early seasons are, but it really requires no prior knowledge of how Survivor works.
Also, it had the best exile island too.
In that Yule found the idol almost immediately.
Yep. And that it was actually an island that was your exile to that no one actually wanted to go to. Like, they were being hit by real storms. There was nothing to shelter on. Whereas, I think this next season we're going to talk about, Exile Island was probably better than their camp.
One of the islands. So let's talk about that season. So, they followed Cook Islands to Fiji. And sorry,
Billy had Fiji ranked number 7 on his list, and I kid you not here, this was 17 spots higher than anyone else ranked it. Although, I just watched this season, and like I said earlier, Andy and I seriously debated giving this season an entire episode to itself, because there's a whole lot to discuss here. But tell us why you had it number 7, Billy.
Number 1, I watched it the first time, and, it doesn't go as down as terribly the first time. And I sort of watched it a second time when my mom kind of decided to watch these seasons as well. I was sort of watching them with her, but I wasn't really paying attention. So, the third time I rewatched it.
Third time?
Like, I just hit the highlights usually that time. Just, for this. Man, I forgot how, 7's too high. It would drop, 5, 6 spot. I counted the number of episodes that matter in that season. There are maybe 4 episodes. 9 episodes of that season basically don't matter.
Yeah, I need to rescind your rankings privileges, because this is the second one that we've discussed that you're like, oh, no, that's a bad ranking.
But you know what? Give this an opportunity to discuss seasons, because otherwise it'd just be like, why does this season suck? Yeah. So tell us why you thought highly of it, even if you don't think as highly.
Even then, I still think 7 might be appropriate, because I think Fiji, in some ways, might be the most interesting season of Survivor for the very worst reasons. It has absolutely the worst twist in Survivor. I think Redemption Island comes close to being as bad, except Redemption Island isn't as aggressively terrible as the twist on Fiji. And for those who don't know, the twist on Fiji was the haves versus have-nots. So everyone gets dropped on one beach, they get lavish instructions and materials for one camp, then they duke it out at a challenge, winner gets the good camp. The losers get sent to somewhere else.
Yeah, so the somewhere else they get sent is essentially sort of a cave with no fire, no flint. I think they had a machete.
Yeah.
No water, nothing.
Yeah, nothing. And then they continue competing in challenges and losing. And when you first watch it, you don't really realize this is the pattern of the season. It's just gonna keep continuing on and like this. And also the thing too is, usually people talk about the Medallion of Power and what a terrible twist it was. I think it gets a little too much shade just because it was clearly a dumb idea that didn't really work. And then they just jettisoned it within 3 episodes. It barely had any impact. They realized it. They got rid of it. For whatever reason, in Fiji, the haves versus have-not twist, they just could not dig themselves out of the hole. Okay, you've lost the challenge, you now got fire, here's a flint. They did not do that to, using Yao Man's glasses, finally build a fire, and Jeff Probst very jerkily, gives them a flint. It's why didn't you do that the first tribal council? Just little things like that could have stopped the bleeding somehow. Earl gets sent to the first Exile Island on that season, and he has a flint and a fire. He's
living better than the people on his tribe.
He kills a sneeze. He's eating. He has fire. He is, probably in better shape than everyone else.
Yeah, he really should have keistered that thing. Come on, Earl, take one for the team. No, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It is the worst challenge. It is the worst gimmick, the worst idea Survivor's ever had. And you can think of how it happens in brainstorming. Hey, let's think of ideas for the show. And what if one tribe has a lot? And you could, that's an idea you throw out there, but it shouldn't last much longer than the next thought, which would be, that would be terrible. That's why don't we play a football game where one team has pads and the other team doesn't?
You know what we can look at to find out what happens in haves versus have-nots? Human history.
That's right. Look at that. The army that has a lot seems to win a lot. Poor people don't do so well. But yeah, to Billy's point, and why John and I had so much to say about this, is Fiji is often thought of as one of the worst seasons. And I'm not even sure people are wrong about that.
No.
But it is wrong in so fascinating of ways.
Yeah.
Other seasons that we think a little of basically just didn't work for most part. I mean, some of it's also bad ideas, like Nicaragua, the worst season in the history of the show. But some of it, one of the scenes we're going to talk about later, just didn't work. Like, things just didn't come together. Fiji, they were actively bad in fascinating sociological studies. This actually was a psychological experiment at Berkeley, where they gave two people played Monopoly. One person got like twice as much money as the others, and they would earn more money throughout the game. When they like went around the board, they got like $200 instead of $100. And I think they were allowed to collect rent, and the other person wasn't. At first, the people kind of feel a little, shucks, bad. Like, I can't believe I'm playing. You don't have a good shot at this. But eventually what happens is the people that are given advantages just start to feel like they've earned them. Like they are entitled to them. And the people without just become victims, and they can't do much about it. And the people with the haves in this experiment become entitled. And they have no empathy after the end. And this is, of course, a symbol for life in the developed world.
So this is funny because in this show, Probst keeps feeding that. Like,
yes,
the have-nots keep going to tribal council, and Probst gives them the "you have to dig deep to win these challenges" thing. They're malnourished. They're dehydrated. Why do you think the other tribe is winning? Is it because this tribe's not trying hard enough? They might get scurvy.
The have tribes, probably some of them
were that much better.
Yeah, they we earned this. We're great. And then they're given eventually the opportunity. Stay out of tribal council and not vote somebody out, or give up your camp. They're like, no. We're just going to keep being rich. We can get rid of somebody out. Just like, it's like, no. We won't provide health care. We'll just keep being rich. And it's fascinating when you think of it that way. So from a failure standpoint, it's a far more interesting failure than most others. But also, I feel second half of Fiji is actually pretty good on its own, which is probably why Billy thought highly of it to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you're done with the season, you often just think of the end of it. But the beginning was quite a slog.
Yeah. It is a horrific tire fire, and you just can't look away.
Yao Man was barely enough to overcome
at the early part, because not only is, what we've discussed, the imbalance just ridiculous, but it made people awful. The losers were starving and thirsty and couldn't think straight, and then throw that into a fact where you have to, eliminate somebody all the time and try and think strategically. That makes people bad. And we learned this in earlier seasons where they deprive people too much. It's often not very interesting. And then, like I said, the other tribe were entitled and awful. So you had people like Lisi and Rocky and Alex and Mookie. And it was painful to watch. Bullying Anthony and Dreams would rotate between being an awful person and being an underdog who was being picked on for not so subtle racist reasons.
Well, now that you mentioned Dreams, let's go ahead and skip around and talk about the defining player of the season, because he's my pick.
Okay.
Because Dreams, just like this season, Dreams is impossible to peg. He has the most bizarre edit I've ever seen. He goes from, the beginning, here's the Dreams edit. He starts off, he's like this feel-good homeless story, and you're like, oh, that's great. Someone to root for him. Then he's terrible to everyone, and you're like, wow, this guy's kind of a terrible human being. And then he's an underdog again because everyone hates him, and you're like, oh, now I'm back on the Dreams side.
It's not his fault that he doesn't know what a French press is. There's different, this is like an SAT thing where he just has different life experiences.
So then he betrays the Four Horsemen. Then he's honorable for agreeing to give up immunity to Yao. And then, of course, he goes back on that deal, and everyone hates him. And then he pretends that this was his plan all along. It is the most total train wreck of an edit. You can't predict from week to week what it's going to be like, and that's the perfect descriptor for this season.
Billy, who do you think was the defining player?
Yao Man. The thing about Yao Man is he was put on this terrible, awful season. And number one, he came out of it as still a good person, for one thing. That's one thing I always appreciate about Yao Man is his grace under pressure. And he makes everything more interesting. And I mean everything. Like, there's one challenge which he basically wins single-handedly, and it's a carnival game. There is no reason why we should care about this challenge. There is nothing inherently interesting about any of this. It's just, shooting arrows, throwing terrible, awful spears, and he makes that interesting. It's like, I am looking for the straightest arrow. And then he goes for the longest run up to throw his spear. And then he kisses his bicep. Like, there is no reason this challenge should have been interesting or entertaining on any level. Yao Man single-handedly made it interesting.
I agree that Yao Man was the breakout character. He was the star. He's awesome in ways that I think people might, if even since, undersold it. For one, because most people don't really want to talk about Fiji. Two, because he was a basic non-presence in Micronesia. But three, I think they think he's the cute old Asian guy, and they just think of him that way. But he was kind of dominant. He dominated in challenges in interesting ways, like Billy was saying. But he was also a strategic player. He was thinking of moves. He helped guide the thing, and he would have won this season easily. And it wasn't just because he was well liked; it's because he was accomplished. But I think you won me over, John. I think Dreams might have been the defining player of this season. And I will just once say, because he gets no credit, because again, people don't want to talk about the season. I really liked Earl. Billy was asking, where's the next Yao? I think Earl was the next Yao. I mean, yeah, Earl was the next Yule. Calm, reassured leader types, reasonably competent at challenges that were able to control their alliance in ways that they might not in a non-racially diverse season.
I would give Yule a bit more credit just because I feel
Earl
like
is the poor man's Yule, or maybe not. Well, yes. Especially in the terminology of Fiji.
Appropriately, the poor man's Yule. So we didn't even discuss my notes on this season. The rumor was that we were going to have another season divided by race. But of course, white people had to go and screw it up. Melissa McNulty, who is, I looked her up. She's the hottest McNulty since Jimmy McNulty. She had a panic attack She had a panic attack, and it wasn't, I think it was like day one or something. It wasn't even actually before the season started. It was, they were already filming, and she was like, I can't do this anymore. And so she didn't get replaced, and they had 19 people. And by the way, that makes white people 0-2 in racially diverse Survivor seasons.
Why they never did it again.
Exactly.
I think it was before shooting started, but like they'd already done all of the pre-shooting stuff. They'd already done like the cast photo, so she's in it.
That's what I'm meaning. Day one, not of the game, but day one on the island.
And this is before they'd have like extras on hand. I think because of this, sometimes they'll bring extra people with them and then just say, sorry, understudy, it didn't happen for you.
Because there are only 19 people, they nominate Sylvia to split the tribes up. Then she gets sent to exile and takes the place of the first person voted out. Then, of course, we have the hidden immunity idols at the camps that will both come into play later on in the game, one to hilarious effect, and we'll discuss that, I'm sure, very shortly, because I think I know what Andy's highlight of the season is. Yao Man finds one, and was it Mookie that was the first to grab it? Yeah, he was.
Yeah. They were all looking for it together, and Mookie laid hands on it.
And Mookie got his hands on it first. So, yeah, one idol in each camp, and like I said, they both ended up being crucial to the game, or at least the story of the game. Mm-hmm. Now let's move on to trashing/praising this season.
And it's both those things. Because, the highlight of the season was the It's a Turtle episode, which was the first real post-merge episode. Because here's another awful thing this season did. They had a merge, and then they split them off into two teams for immunity. And the losing team of this merged tribe are the only people that go to tribal council. It's dumbfoundingly stupid. And the only thing it can make me think is that they were like, oh, wait, we weren't supposed to merge yet. What did you do, bros? You read the wrong script. So what ended up happening is poor Michelle, who was in a good spot, is ambered and sent to like the only person on the other tribe. So when they lose, she was an easy boot. She had no friends on that side, which sometimes happens at swaps. It will happen in Gabon, but that's when there's still two tribes. They had a post-merge tribal council that only featured half of the people that made the merge.
Yeah. Also, that challenge could have been so disastrous if both sides thought about it for 10 seconds. And you could have had it mutual, that both teams were mutually trying to throw the same challenge. It could have been disastrous.
The real highlight, though, is the next episode that functions basically as the first post-merge episode. And that's when the four horsemen try to ingratiate themselves and pick up another person. But if not, they have this foolproof plan of Mookie giving the idol to Alex, who, as kind of the alpha, was the most likely target. So then they wanted everybody to vote for Alex. He would play his idol and bounce off the other side. But one of the four horsemen was Dreams, and he wasn't very interested in being one of them because they were awful to Dreams until they basically had to vote off Lisi instead of him because Dreams would at least give them a better shot if they had to go to one more immunity, which of course they should have instead of doing this weird merge and then immunity thing.
So you say it was a foolproof plan, and yet...
Yes. A fool broken up. So he tells the other side their plan. And honestly, their side was bright enough they might have been able to figure this out. So he's like, no, it's going to be Alex. But then Dreams is doing some weird things where he's going both sides. So when Dreams leaves, and this is the absolute highlight, a highlight within a highlight of the episode, they're all just talking strategy. And they're like, so do we believe this guy? Should we do Alex? What if it's, Mookie? Or whatever? Would Mookie really give it up? And then I believe it was Stacey who's just like, let's just vote out Edgardo. And they're like, yeah, Edgardo. And it was just great because it was like, again, just like, the highlight in Cook Islands, this was an episode almost dedicated entirely to strategy talk. Who won the immunity didn't really matter. It was one side versus the other. How's it going to go down? And there was moves and there was counter moves. And then for some reason, Dream goes back and decides to start playing that side again, but not quite. So then you get to Tribal Council and they vote. Dreams actually does vote for, I believe, Mookie. Because they didn't tell Dreams a part of the plan. So at least this way you get to know which side he's on. Because it all depends on which way he votes. Anybody has an idol. Alex walks up with the biggest shit-eating grin that's ever been on Survivor. It's like, ha ha ha.
We got him.
Yeah, because he was such a jerk, too. He was such a misogynist. And it was because he was entitled by being part of the Habs tribe first. And he plays the idol, and he sits down, and he's like, yeah. And then Edgardo is the first vote. And the look on Edgardo's face is the best.
It really is.
That episode alone makes me love Fiji probably 5 more spots than it should be, which might mean that it's the 23rd at best season.
Yeah.
So that's the highlight. A lesser highlight is just as bad as the have and have-nots thing was. I liked it once they swapped it around, and the people I enjoyed were on the half tribe, so maybe I'm part of the problem. I don't mind iniquity, but it's in my favor.
Exactly.
What do you guys think?
It's got to be the Fall of the Four Horsemen thing, because... how awesome was that? I mean, the only other even close contender for me was when Yao saves himself with the idol later on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although I could kind of see the writing on the wall on that one. I was really happy that it happened, but I could kind of see it coming.
Yeah, it's nice though that back when seasons happened where people could actually save themselves by playing an idol.
It was funny because we were discussing, stuff getting edited into different places. So I watched this, episode after episode. And I noticed, in the episode before they actually voted for Yao, everybody's like, oh, yeah, we're going to vote out Yao. And I'm like, that seems odd and out of place. So I made note of who's having this conversation. And I see the very next episode when they actually do attempt to vote out Yao, it's those 3 talking about it. They just edit it into the previous episode to make it look like there was some drama as to who was going home.
Because Yao was such clearly a fan favorite that they had to you might be in trouble this week.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Billy, is there a different highlight? Because I'm right. So.
Well, yeah, that Tribal Council, not just the highlight of the season, is probably one of the highlights of Survivor.
It might be my favorite episode in the history of Survivor.
A dark horse highlight for me is Yao Man, the car, and Dreams. I just feel like this is probably... Do you know when Probst started doing the whole, we let the players make the rules? It's their game, it's their rules. Because I feel like it must have come from this just because Yao Man goes so far off script in a season of Survivor. No one has gone that far off script.
It could have been when 2 girls offered to strip for peanut butter and chocolate that magically arrived. But this is one of the more bigger moments. But I think it's just basically whenever contestants had good ideas for good television.
Oh, yeah.
They've been like, let's not mess this up. Let's see how this plays out.
Yeah. Yep. And... the fact that Yao Man goes in flames because of this is kind of awful, but I think it has sort of it's a dark horse contender for moment of the season. And if it had worked, we'd still be talking about, can you believe how Man traded a car for you? And it worked. And
yeah, if it had worked, it would have been huge, but it didn't.
Yeah,
and there's a flaw in all of that for Man. As much as people are like, oh, poor Man, and Dreams is history's greatest monster because they did that. He did that to a well-off professor that is set in his probably already sent all his kids.
Man's gonna be okay. Don't worry.
Man shouldn't have insisted when it was time for him to give up the immunity.
Yeah, that
I'm going to vote you out.
Yeah.
It should have been like, give it to me and we'll vote out Cassandra. But Man wanted it both ways because for some reason people were convinced that people would vote for Dreams in the final tribal council. One other highlight, though, that nobody ever talks about because it's only me, is the sequence of the Fallen when they get rid of all the they give the final tribute to everybody. It's what everybody hates that, rightly so. I just rewatched Micronesian. I'm like, God, this segment is death. But the reason why I always defend it is because of this season. Because when it was Lisi's turn to talk, and she's talking about how awesome it is, the editors, to their eternal credit, show her falling off the challenge platform in a game of memory. She finds a way to land flat on her face. And I think one other time when she looks completely stupid and is just like, God bless you, because 5 minutes later she's basically using slavery riddles to talk to all three black people in the final.
Yeah, that was pretty offensive.
So that's why,
to her credit, I think she's too dumb to know where that
I do too. But also, to her non-credit, I think she's probably a horrific racist. Because everything else she said to them kind of follows along that line. Yeah, but that's the one reason why I like the Journey of the Fallen, or whatever they call it, the Parade of Losers, is it gives the editors one last chance to take a dig at some of the worst people, and it was never done to better use than in Fiji.
I will say that was mildly entertaining. And generally, I fast forward through those, and I was about to do it in this season as we were watching, and I went, wait a minute. I know what's coming. I want to see if this is actually true. And it was pretty hilarious.
It's classic. I need that.
The editing group's opinion really comes through.
They clearly hated her through the entire season. They didn't have to show some of the crap that they showed her doing, but they did for our benefit.
Any other questions on the season? Obviously, the gimmick of the season was horrific.
Yes. I actually went broader and just said everything pre-merge was the biggest flaw of the season, gimmick included, because it really felt like they were throwing absolutely everything against the wall, like that bizarre not merged challenge thing we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. Just everything they tried was just, why are you doing this? This is so weird. Yeah. But it was fascinating to watch.
Underrated flaw of this season that is a fun little trivia note. Boo is the reason why Russell Hantz is a thing. He's friends with Russell Hantz, and he introduced him to production. So we got great. Russell because of Boo. So
the white people are terrible in the race war seasons. Trends continues.
Exactly. Although,
and thus Russell votes for Boo in the Hall of Fame every fucking year.
Does he?
Or he has before. I don't know if he still does.
That's such a Russell thing to do.
Yep.
It's probably Boo and then two chicks that Russell wants to get in the pants of.
Well, he's also voted for the one chick in Redemption Island who was teaming up with him.
Of course he did.
Russell sucks. All right. Next season.
Let's move on to the number 8 on Billy's list, Panama. I'll hit notes first, and then I'll let you tell us why it's number 8 on your list, Billy, because I got some short notes. We'll be done with this quickly.
Sure.
So this is the first full season that we have Exile Island. We did get a brief glimpse of it in Palau, appropriately, since this season is technically named Exile Island. First time we ever had 4 tribes, which lasted for all of 1 episode. And this is the very first appearance of the Tyler Perry idol that we discussed earlier, the one that Yule finds. And in this season, Terry finds. And, of course, we had our first evacuation since Australia, which is kind of funny because if Bruce had been able to evacuate, he could have stayed around.
Well played.
Thank you. I'm taking a bow. All right, that's all my notes. Let's move on. Tell me why this is number 8 on your list.
But now it'd be 15 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Screw your list.
Yeah. Oh, my list is weird. What I want to see in a season of Survivor is something different. And I think the thing with Panama, what we got different was the Kasaya tribe. This was the tribe that chose each other. Like they picked each other. They picked each other to be together, to play as a tribe together in Survivor, and they dominated. They also hated each other, but somehow, even though they hated each other, they stuck together enough that they were able to beat Terry and his Tyler Perry idol. And like, I really bought into that dynamic, so I really enjoy that. And I can see if other people didn't really find any interest in that. This is basically a straight down the middle season of Survivor, right? Like, right with its winner. Like, Aris is a fine guy, good winner, but no one's, beating down the door, hoping, I wish they just keep bringing them back until they finally win. Like,
I was about to say nobody's asking to bring them back, and then you remember they did.
Except for that one time they did.
Well, I mean more like, no one's asking, like, they kept asking Rob back, and he'll keep coming back until he wins. I feel like there's a handful of players everyone has, like, you wish they just keep calling them back and let them come back until they win. Yao Man is that for me. There's one on this season for me as well.
There you go.
And frankly, if she had won this, Cirie Fields had won this season, I think, everyone would think much more highly of this season.
Yeah, Cirie wins Panama, it becomes a top 10 season almost universally. Yeah.
Absolutely. In watching this show, I wanted nothing more than to be best friends with Cirie. She was the most charming player I've ever seen on Survivor. It was amazing. Like, I was like, oh, Cirie, you're hilarious. You're the best. You're so funny.
You're afraid of leaves.
Exactly. Like, you recognize that all these people are freaking insane and this alliance should be crumbling in front of you, and you're just the best. And somehow she didn't win the season. I knew she was going to lose, and I was still pissed when she got voted out and she lost the fire challenge.
Yeah, it was like, this is the season that disproved every rule, or maybe not every rule, but many, yeah. Tribes that get along is generally a good thing. It's a positive for your success in Survivor. It meant nothing this season. It's like, usually you don't want to team up with loose cannons and weirdos. It worked out just fine. Billy's point, they hated each other, and they couldn't lose. They were always bickering. The other tribe had, like, a Marine in it, an astronaut, and they couldn't do anything. Cirie, was like this woman who didn't want anything to do with the outdoors, seemed completely overwhelmed, and was one of the greatest players of all time. And like this season, and she did it again in Micronesia to only further her legend, but she was amazing here. And not just as a character, but as a player.
Yeah. Right from the first episode. Like, I think no one really thinks too highly of the really small tribe beginning, like, with just, like, 4 people in the stupidest division possible, like, older women, younger men, older men.
Okay, second stupidest again.
Oh, God, yeah.
Haves versus have-nots.
Yeah, but, and this is actually true for Cook Island, too, but I think the small tribe format really works well because you have to get strategic immediately. Like, if you knew going in that first season that her tribe loses, you would think, oh, the older black lady will be the heavier older black lady will be the first one voted out.
Who wants nothing to do with the outdoors. But instead, she got rid of the more outdoorsy one, because Cirie is awesome. I guess in some respects, Cirie is like Chris Dougherty in that she should have been the obvious vote, and then she turned it around, except that she doesn't suck. Take that!
And we love her.
Twitter. Yeah,
you know what's funny? Is this is the only time I can remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, that someone ever, that at least that we've seen, someone ever openly said, yeah, I want to get out of this alliance thing. This is just not working out for me. Can I just be dissolved from this alliance? And then sticks with it anyway. Well, I mean, Shane publicly asks to be let out of the alliance.
Wasn't that he wanted to let out of the alliance? He wanted to be let out of his swear.
Yes.
He had sworn on his son's life or whatever. Let me take back my swear. It's so important. Because that's a thing that matters.
Yeah.
No, it's a kooky cast of characters, and it shouldn't have worked. In many ways, it did. So I see what Billy's saying. For me, this is still like basically the Mendoza line of Survivor, and I just used a baseball term that neither of you got. But
no,
Matt and Emma are like,
it was referenced on How I Met Your Mother in a way that does not have anything to do with baseball.
Yeah, basically,
and that's
this is
roughly
league
the same
average, right?
Yes.
I feel like it's going to be right.
No, actually, Mendoza line is not league average.
Right. Well, anything below the Mendoza line is garbage.
Yes.
And I almost feel like Panama might be. It's right around there where it's not bad, but I don't know if it's really great either. But it certainly has greatness in it, and certainly that element of how is this tribe of crazies holding together is interesting on its own. Yeah. And then Suri.
Yeah, I recorded this when I was watching in episode 5. Shane gets the quote of the season about the Kasai tribe, the dysfunctional functional tribe. 4 people got votes in that tribal council. And yet they still got their way. The person who they wanted to get voted out got voted out.
I actually asked my wife, I think we were mid-season or so, and I said to her, so what's your opinion on the season so far? And she's like, well, the young guys were cute, and I like Suri. That was it. That was the sum total of her thoughts.
Young girls were pretty cute, too.
Yes, they were. Misty and Sally, I went and Googled. I'm like, wait, are these girls ever going to come back? Because, Misty, I'd be okay with that. And nope.
I think she was first out. And then from EW, rides for Sally every time. He's keeps asking Probst when he could bring Sally back. She's got to bring the high socks. I can't remember what his name is.
I think Parvati took Misty's spot, too. When I was rewatching, it's like, oh, Misty looks quite a bit like Parvati.
Yeah, a little bit.
Except in one area. And then Danielle is also pretty attractive, if you like overbites.
If you can tolerate that voice.
Well, again, you turn the volume.
Yeah, technically her little profile page said she was from South Florida. That is not a South Florida accent.
No, she is Boston all the way. But I guess not well enough to get along with Boston Rob. All right, questions.
Okay, so biggest highlight of the season. Let's go with you, Andy.
Well, I mean, besides just the presence of Suri, if you want to get into a more specific moment, it was Suri engineering the 3-2-1 vote. She recognized that other people were looking for goats to take to the end. And she's not a goat. She is the person you need to eliminate in order to win. And Suri's like, nah, that ain't going to happen. And she recognized you don't need to get everybody to agree to you. You don't need a majority for votes to go your way. You need a plurality. And so she needed 3 people. And what those other people did is their own business, as long as they didn't tie. And it was awesome, because Suri is awesome.
It was. It was a great move, just because she recognized, this other girl is going to be much more desirable to keep around than I am, so let's go ahead and nip this in the bud now. And we'll get rid of, I totally blanked on her name, Courtney. I was going to call her Chelsea for some reason. So I had initially every moment that Suri was on screen as my highlight of the season. But I will instead put my other suggestion, which was Bob Dog telling everyone that he's going to go drop the kids off at the pool. He's like, they win the Charmin Shack. They got a nice little outhouse. He's like, well, it's going to go break this thing in. And they're like, well, we're thinking maybe we'll keep some wood in there. He's like, well, I got a 2-up brewing. I'm going to head on in and drop a deuce.
It just speaks to the weird dynamics of Survivor that a guy wanting to use the outhouse for its intended purpose breaks the tribe and turns them against him.
The best part is later on, he gets drunk and sleeps in there, which is pretty disgusting. Because we know from earlier in the season that he has dropped a deuce in there.
Right, but not everybody was, because obviously Bruce wasn't. This is the shittiest season of all time, literally. Bob Dog was actually secretly awesome, and it's unfortunate that he didn't do better in the show, and thus he didn't get a higher profile. But back in the day, he was actually pretty active on the online community, and he was hilarious.
All right, so Billy, what did you rank as your highlight of the season?
I kind of did this quickly, and I thought Shane's boot episode was a highlight, just because you're expecting him to do something insane the moment he gets votes, and he finally has to go, and he doesn't quite disappoint either. Like Shane was such an expressive guy, is a polite way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing the way his face goes, huh? Well, and then he's talking about ice cream on his way out. It's just I think that's partly the problem too with this season. It really doesn't have any of these key highlight moments. And even Suri's 3-2-1 vote, they don't really go that deep into the strategy of it too, because they're keeping the suspense up. So I feel like that's one problem with Pan. There just isn't that key moment, that indelible moment that sticks in your mind. Another one is Aris's, Terry's crying. We're gonna call the ambulance.
That might be Ars's one highlight. And
that might be his highlight of Survivor.
Because the show was wanting to set Terry up as the big hero, because he's a Marine, because he was the underdog, and because he
was a Navy flyer.
Or Navy, exactly. I was going to correct you, but in Team America's defense.
Sorry, we united our armed forces, and I don't understand divisions anymore.
Just because he keeps saying that over and over again during the season, like
yeah. And then he's a Probstian, man crush type. He's very good at challenges and all that. But Terry sucked. And it was awesome when Ars took him down a peg.
Yeah, that's the thing. Terry was in the Yule position with that idol opposing that terrible alliance, and he could not
crack it because they're all like, screw that guy.
Although they did give some confessionals at the end to make it look like, Terry was this great guy. We're really sorry we had to take him out, and we wouldn't want to go against him in the end, blah, blah, blah.
Worst moment in the show.
For me, I just said that there was really no drama. I mean, it was like, other than the fact that it was
you'd
kind of
expect
surprising.
That to break apart, but it never did.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the votes, pretty much it was a pagonging.
Yep.
But
other than Terry, who was both immune and kept winning immunities.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, it was not a ton of drama to the voting, like I said, other than the fact that you just assumed that alliance would fall apart, and it didn't.
Yeah, or he would finally give somebody his idol so that they could control one vote. But nope, not Terry.
He's looking out for number one.
Yep.
Bob Dog's looking out for number two.
Well played, sir. Yeah, similar to that thought. It's just there wasn't enough strategic players. There was Sari and Aris enough. But that's basically it. The rest was kind of a kooky cast of characters, or, a Terry who's basically just a straight up, I'm just going to win challenges type, and also he's a bit of a misogynist. But yeah, it would have been nice if there were people playing against each other. There wasn't that, and then to your point, the end, every episode went as it should have been at the beginning of the episode. And so it wasn't that memorable, even if you kept thinking, maybe they will break apart, or maybe... And it seemed like they were willing. They were willing to sacrifice Aris at every turn if Terry ever would have lost immunity.
They were just dying to do it.
Yeah, but Terry kept winning. And to Aris's credit, he kind of made sure that would happen. If Terry wasn't going to win, he was going to win. Billy, what do you think the biggest flaw of the season was?
That's the thing about the season. There's nothing really, no real major highlights, but there's also no real major lowlights. I think the dumbest thing was the beginning with the 4 tribes separated, just because that felt like, ooh, this is the incubator for Nicaragua. This didn't work. This worked out pretty well. Let's try it again. But a whole season structured around it. So that might be, Panama might have to take some of the flack for Nicaragua in that regard.
Because of the olds versus youngs thing.
Yeah, but otherwise, there's nothing really wrong with the season, but there's nothing really right with the season either, is kind of the thing.
Which gets into my defining character of the show. I think it actually is Aris. Because he's just as milquetoast as the season is, He's fine. And actually, if you get to hear him on Rob's podcast, he's pretty engaging and funny. But on this season, he was a mild, blandly handsome yoga guy. Still kind of too young to really know what he's talking about. So at times he's just, full of BS like young guys are. But it was pretty straightforward, and it was that kind of season.
Also,
and he kept those crazies in check. Whereas Sari kind of more is the really exciting co-star in a show, So Aris is the bland
Ted Mosby.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he's the bland protagonist, and the show kind of needs that. And he's the thing that all the crazies and the interesting people spun off of. Yeah. Of Sari being the star. I guess the
can't believe that we got 2 How I Met Your Mother references in tonight.
First time I thought about it all year, too.
Keeping it CBS. There you go. Billy, who do you think was the character?
Player.
I think it's Shane, just because he was crazy central and weirdly articulate in his craziness, too. That was the thing. He wasn't just, frothing out the mouth like a Brandon Hans or whatever. He was very articulate in his, heats and whatnot. And, he literally threatens, gives... this probably should have been the highlight, too, when he threatens Courtney.
With murder! That wacky Shane! I'm gonna find you and kill you in your house!
And her response is, how do you know my house is crappy?
Yeah, that's the thing you should be concerned about.
I'm offended that you would suggest that about where I live, not the end of my life. Well, in Shane's defense, he was able to prepare all these thoughts by writing them on his BlackBerry.
Actually, I picked Shane because of all the drama and weird behavior. He, just like this season, turned out to be fairly predictable.
All right. One more season, right?
Yeah, and this will be fun because I haven't seen this. This is the only season of Survivor that I have not seen. It's Survivor Gabon. Billy had it ranked number 20 on his list, the second lowest of the seasons that he had seen at that time. Only ahead of Nicaragua, which is justifiably going to remain in his last place. So the only thing I can offer for this is some trivia that I dug up. We had Exile Island, where Sugar went 5 straight times. And at this particular iteration of Exile Island, you could choose to either sleep in comfort and enjoy a fruit basket, or sleep outside and search for the idol. And last but not least, there were 2 tribe swaps, one at day 10, the other at day 22. So have at it, gentlemen, because I have nothing to add.
So, Billy, why does this season suck? Because it does.
Like,
spoiler alert, it sucks.
It's hard to say exactly why it sucks, just because it's not like Fiji, where Fiji was aggressively terrible, like in your face terrible.
Same with Nicaragua.
Yeah. Whereas Gabon isn't in your face aggressively terrible. Like, even the terrible people aren't that terrible. Like, there wasn't too much drama. The challenges were actually pretty good, and that's partly one of the reasons why I would give it a leg up over Nicaragua. It was just such a blah season that when you get to the end of it, you really, even the people on it can't articulate why they should get $1 million. Like, they literally get to the end and, like, Bob's says, you should give me the $1 million because I deserve it.
Although, in Bob's favor, he was probably looking at his competition and was just like, scoreboard, bitches. Like, you're not going to vote for them. When I was watching Gabon, it was not an enjoyable experience for me, but it wasn't like Nicaragua or Fiji when I was like, soul searching. Like, should I just keep watching this? I know I've been watching this show every week for, years now, but this is not enjoyable. Whereas Gabon, I was dutifully watching it. It wasn't really bothering me, but there wasn't anything I liked about it. But the more I reflect on it in retrospect, it's like, yeah, that season was terrible. Like, there was nothing good about Gabon. They built up an underdog story in Sugar, which was easy to do. As John says, she went to Exile 5 straight times. Like, she's literally an outcast. But by all indications, Sugar was also a very terrible person. But it's just that it wasn't just them manufacturing an underdog. The people on the other side were also terrible. I think some people have got twisted, like, oh, the show was just pure editing. They made Sugar look good, and, Randy and Corinne look bad. No, Randy and Corinne were bad. Randy is probably the biggest misanthrope in the history of the show, and he would call himself that. Corinne was actively trying to be that stereotypical bitchy reality show contestant.
I have to admit, I was actually disappointed with Corinne because she did not come across that at all. Like, I've heard her on various podcasts, like, oh, I was expecting more mean and hate from you.
Yeah,
Where's
like that's
the hate?
That's her shtick post there. That was her shtick in casting, and then she'd try to get it, but she's probably just not as clever on the spot as she thinks she is. But she was awful. So it was like then the other underdogs, the scrappy underdogs who keep losing in a Fiji type way, are like Crystal Cox and Kenny. They suck too. Crystal Cox is the former Olympian who could not win anything. She could have been in a race against Gamer Kenny and come in second. Now, they always had to put the cry on, and I think almost like the editors kicking Lacey when she's down, of, former Olympic medalist. Well, now they can't say that about her because she's been stripped of her medals due to steroids. But she sucked, and she wasn't interesting, and she was a whiner, and so was Kenny. So, yeah, Bob wins because he was fine.
Because he was there at the end, basically.
Yeah, he was a nice, likable... Nobody hated him. He was likable enough. He was literally crafty. And, because he fashioned the greatest fake idol of all time. And he won a few challenges near the end. But there's really no highlights of Gabon. There's just a series of lowlights that at the time don't seem terribly bad, but when it's devoid of highlights, it becomes a problem. When, Exile Island, they have to dedicate at least a sequence an episode, and it means nothing, because I think Sugar found it like her first trip there.
Yep.
The 2 swap thing was a disaster. The second swap was like 1 episode before the merge, so basically it was just like China. Let's get rid of the strongest person that just got gifted to us. So I don't know if they threw the challenge to get rid of Marcus, but they didn't have to. It was the tribe that lost all the time.
They were used to it.
Yeah, it was like, we'll give max effort anyway, so we'll lose. It stinks.
So what was the highlight of the season then? Let's go with Billy first.
I have a few that could
You do?
be.
That's a lie. There aren't more than one highlight.
I'm not saying they're good highlights, but I have a few ideas what might qualify as a highlight. One reason Gabon is on the rankings beats Nicaragua, it's not on a goddamn beach. So there's literally an interview, you get interviews, like there's this one place they interview people overlooking this lagoon, and an elephant comes out of the foliage behind these people being interviewed, and it's like, that's pretty nice.
So,
This is nature footage.
For you.
Nature
Scenery.
Well, I think it was the first
flora
HD
and fauna.
season, so that helps.
Yep. And Crystal at the reunion show admitting that all she is good at running on flat ground in a circle. That was one of the highlights for me.
Yeah,
As a former track guy, I can second that.
Yeah, I think the highlight was probably Bob's Fake Idol. No, actually, there was one episode I liked, and it's probably also why it took me a while to realize just how thoroughly awful the season was. And one of the ways I came up with it is it's kind of like one of those seasons nobody's seen. Like yourself, like a few other guests. So when you're like, hey, which of these should I see? I always be like, Gabon. No, you shouldn't watch Gabon. The episode where they voted out Randy was actually pretty great. And these two things come together. They already had the numbers. They could vote out Randy if they wanted to. But Sugar and her group found out about Bob's Fake Idol. Bob had kind of been brought into their alliance a bit. He was with Corinne and Randy, but people liked him because everybody else there was awful. So they decide to give Randy the fake idol just to mess with him. And Randy's plan, because this is, it broken the other way the episode before Charlie was voted out, it became obvious that Susie and Bob weren't on their side. So his plan to flip the game, because he thought Bob was maybe still on their side, was to get everybody to vote for him by being aggressively awful to them, as opposed to just the normal really awful he had been to people. So he was just, being a grump around camp, starting fights. I think he was a jerk at the reward challenge. Or no, at the auction, I mean. Until I think he won the ability to give cookies to everybody, and he was trying to get out of not giving them to like Sugar, I think. And and he was the type that was leading the charge that there was no way she has an idol. We don't have to worry about her idol. There's no way she has the idol, to the point where he thought Bob's fake idol was real because Sugar was too dumb to ever find an idol. It's like, guess what? You send somebody 5 times, they're gonna find it, because the way Survivor works, eventually it is the idol is right here. That would be the clue. But he was that smug that it was kind of fun that Bob gives him the fake idol, basically I think just to ingratiate himself to the group. And he, again, kind of like Alex, smugly plays it at Tribal Council. And, Probst is like, yeah, this is a fake idol. And then they just start openingly laughing at him, like, at Tribal Council, like, ah, ha, ha. So it was one of those fun moments where, that Survivor sometimes delivers when the bully gets theirs. So that was a highlight.
Andy's description of this episode, better than the actual episode. Like
I feel like I was there.
Andy's told me this spiel before. I went into this episode expecting it's not that good.
I just loved seeing them laugh at Randy.
Yeah.
All right, and then the worst part of this season is what makes any season really bad: casting. There was a lot of crappy people, and thus crappy people do crappy things.
They brought Sugar and Randy back for Heroes vs. Villains, and they were the
first 2 taken out.
Yeah, and theoretically they were the best.
All right, what other questions you got?
How well did the season's twist or gimmick work?
Was there one really?
I guess Exile Island?
Yeah, that was at this point a game feature. They'd done it a lot of times.
It was hardly
but to
a gimmick.
Speak on that, this is the season that broke Exile Island. By sending Sugar there every time, which is the smart play. You pick a weak person and you just keep going because that eliminates the possibilities for the idol to do something. Unless, of course, you're Randy and you think, doesn't matter, she still didn't get it. Although this is a season that had another idol because it had him on different camps, and Marcus found it and then threw it into the ocean. Way to go, Marcus! I bet when you suddenly swap put you against the other tribe, you wish you still had that in your pocket. And thus, I think they did it the following season because they were already, filming. But we never saw it again because it makes for bad television to just do what you're supposed to do, which is send the same person over and over again to eliminate the possibilities of who it could be.
All right, so who was the defining player of this season, Billy?
I guess Sugar. maybe an argument can be made for Crystal and Kenny.
I think it's Sugar.
But yeah, Sugar.
She was a person that was a personality that they edited to bring out the most in, and it didn't matter because it still wasn't very good. And that, I think, defines the season of Gabon. They tried to find ways to edit it because the editors and producers of Survivor are really good at their job. There just wasn't any there. But, I was cheering for her because, she was kind of hot. And again, the other people were awful. But, yeah, she defines Gabon pretty well because ultimately Sugar kind of sucks too.
All right, is that all the questions?
I believe so. I guess the only final question is try to tell us we're wrong, Twitter. I just would love to hear from the person that loves Gabon, and I have a feeling I might know who that person is.
Yeah, I don't think we've encountered anybody that loves Gabon. Vanuatu, yes. Gabon, no. So speaking of the internet, Andy, tell people how they can get in touch with us.
All right, you can leave us a tweet at Purple Rock Pod. You can leave us an email, purplerockpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us and leave us a comment on our blog at purplerockpodcast.wordpress.com. Or you know what? How about you leave us a comment or a rating on iTunes? That'd be nice. That'd be swell. And I think there's one more way about voicemail or something, John.
You can send a voicemail to JR Purple Rock on Skype. And we actually got one this week. We got it just before this episode was recorded, so we didn't get really time to address it, but it was from Joshua, and Joshua has recently introduced someone to Survivor by using Heroes versus Villains, which I feel like is setting that person up for a letdown when they see future seasons.
Yes. This is the greatest the show could ever be. It'll never reach this height again. Keep watching 27 more seasons. But no, thank you, Joshua. You had some nice things to say about our show as well as Survivor. And then you also told us that apparently Samoa is pronounced the way our guest suggested, but I still don't believe you, even though you suggest yourself to be Fijian.
Samoa was the, I believe, pronunciation that he gave, and that was pretty close to what Craig had said. So, sorry for doubting you, Craig. Apparently you weren't that far off.
Just didn't think somebody in Maritimes Canada would know how to pronounce Polynesian words.
I choose to continue to pronounce it in the awful American way.
All right,
just like I do with all Spanish words.
Yes. So tune in whenever we do one of these again. We have a couple more of these talking about every season before we do our rankings. And at some point we might record a podcast talking about the new season and the new cast that's been released. Spoiler alert, meh.
Oof, yeah. Might even be worse than meh. Particularly in one area.
Yes, John Rocker might beat out Randy Bailey for biggest misanthrope in Survivor history.
It's a race to the bottom.
All right. So thank you for listening. John, anything else to say?
Theme music.